My name is Ryan, I'm 38, and my wife, Jessica, is 36. We've been married for 10 years, and until recently, I thought we had the kind of life people envy. We've got two beautiful kids, Emma, who's 6, and Ethan, who just turned 1. Life wasn't perfect, but whose is? We had our ups and downs like any couple. Jessica and I met in college back when life was simpler. She was the loud, confident type who could command a room, and I was the quiet guy who couldn't believe she picked me. We fell hard and fast, got married right after graduation, and started building a life together. I thought we had the same goals, the same dreams. But things started feeling off about 6 months ago, not long after Ethan was born. Jessica seemed distant. She was always on her phone, scrolling through Instagram or texting. She started going out more, saying she needed me time after being home with the baby all day. At first, I didn't think much of it. I mean, who wouldn't need a break with a newborn and a kindergartner running around? But then, the little things began to pile up. She stopped showing interest in the things we used to do together, our Friday movie nights, our long talks after the kids went to bed. Her excuses started getting flimsier, too. Going out with friends turned into vague answers about running errands or needing space. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Jessica could be difficult. Hell, sometimes downright bitchy. But I loved her, and I wanted to believe the best. I told myself it was just postpartum stress, that she'd come around. But the nagging feeling that something wasn't right wouldn't go away. And then, one night, she left her phone on the counter while she was in the shower. I don't know what came over me that night. Jessica's phone was just sitting there, face down on the counter, taunting me. Normally, I wouldn't touch it. I've always believed in respecting each other's privacy. But something about her behavior lately had my gut screaming at me. I picked it up, my hands already sweating, and hit the power button. The screen lit up with a string of notifications. At first, it was the usual stuff. Texts from her friends, a few Instagram alerts. But then I saw it. A message preview from someone named Brandon. Brandon, last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you face blowing a kiss. My heart stopped. I told myself it had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe it was an inside joke or just a friend being weird. But when I opened the conversation, it hit me like a truck. The chat history was extensive. Pages and pages of texts, each one more damning than the last. Brandon. Wish I could wake up next to you every day. Jessica. Me too. Maybe one day face blowing a kiss. Brandon. When can we meet again? I miss your smile. Jessica. Friday night. Ryan thinks I'm going to yoga. My stomach turned. Friday night was our night. The one night a week I'd been holding on to as a reminder of what we used to have. And all this time she'd been lying, using it as her cover. Then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife even deeper, I found photos. Nothing explicit, but intimate enough to make me want to throw the phone across the room. The two of them at a coffee shop. Jessica leaning against him, her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. Couldn't breathe. My mind was racing, trying to reconcile the woman I thought I knew with the person in these messages. Just as I was about to put the phone down, I heard the shower turn off. Panic set in, and I quickly placed the phone back where I'd found it, making sure it looked untouched. My hands were trembling as I tried to act normal. Jessica came out of the bathroom in her robe, toweling her hair dry. She gave me a quick glance and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice casual. "Nothing," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "Just checking some emails." She shrugged and walked past me to the bedroom. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she might hear it. That night I couldn't sleep. I just lay there next to her, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the hell I was going to handle this. I made it through the next day at work by sheer force of will, running on caffeine and adrenaline. My mind was a hurricane of thoughts. Should I confront her? Should I wait? Should I hire a damn private investigator? But by the time I got home, I'd made up my mind. I couldn't live like this, not knowing. Jessica was in the kitchen, casually scrolling through her phone, while Emma colored at the table and Ethan babbled in his playpen. The normalcy of the scene felt like a cruel joke. "Jess?" I said, my voice tight. We need to talk. She looked up, her brow furrowing. What about? About Brandon, I said bluntly, crossing my arms. Her reaction was immediate. A sharp intake of breath, her eyes widening for just a moment before she schooled her expression. Who? Don't, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Don't play dumb with me. I saw the messages, Jessica. I know. She froze, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Then her face hardened. You went through my phone? Are you seriously trying to make me the bad guy here? I shot back, my voice rising. You're the one lying, sneaking around, cheating. And now you're upset because I caught you? Keep your voice down, she hissed, glancing toward Emma, who was now watching us with wide eyes. Don't you dare tell me to keep my voice down, I snapped, lowering it anyway. How long, Jess? How long have you been seeing him? She crossed her arms, her jaw set in defiance. It's not what you think. I laughed bitterly. Oh, really? Because what I think is that my wife has been sneaking off with some guy while I'm here taking care of our kids and busting my ass to give you the life you wanted. It's not that simple, Ryan, she said, her voice shaking. You don't understand. Then make me understand, I shouted, slamming my hand on the counter. She flinched, then took a deep breath. Fine, she said, her voice dripping with venom. You want the truth? Brandon makes me feel alive, Ryan. Something I haven't felt in years. You're so caught up in work, in being dad of the year, that you forgot about me, about us.
Ist her, stunt?
So, this is my fault? I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You cheat on me, and now you're blaming me? I'm not blaming you, she said, throwing up her hands. But maybe if you'd paid more attention. Don't, I interrupted, pointing a finger at her. Don't you dare finish that sentence. You had a choice, Jessica. You could have come to me, talked to me. Instead, you decided to blow up our marriage. She didn't respond, just stared at me with a mixture of anger and something that looked like regret. I shook my head, my chest tight. I'm done, I said. I can't do this right now. I turned and walked out the door, ignoring Emma's frightened voice calling, Daddy. It broke me to leave like that, but I couldn't stay. Not when every second near her made me feel like I was suffocating. I ended up at a nearby park, sitting in my car and staring at the dashboard as the weight of everything came crashing down. The anger that had kept me going during the confrontation was gone, replaced by a deep, gnawing sadness. 10 years. 10 years of marriage, of love, of building a life together, and it all felt like a lie. I thought about our wedding day, the vows we made, the promises to be there for each other no matter what. I thought about the nights we stayed up late, planning our future, dreaming of the family we now had. And now, here I was, parked alone in the dark, wondering if any of it had ever been real. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually my phone buzzed. It was Jessica. Jessica, we need to talk. Please come home. I ignored it. I wasn't ready to face her again. Not yet. Instead, I started scrolling through the texts I'd found on her phone, as if torturing myself with the details would somehow make it easier to process. The messages weren't just flirtatious, they were intimate. Brandon knew things about Jessica that I hadn't heard her talk about in years. Her favorite coffee order, the playlist she listened to on bad days, even the way she preferred her pillows fluffed at night. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. She'd been confiding in him in ways she hadn't with me in a long time. It wasn't just the betrayal of her body. It was the betrayal of her heart. Eventually, I went home. The house was quiet when I walked in, the kind of stillness that felt heavy and wrong. Jessica was sitting at the dining table, her face pale and tear-streaked. She looked up as I walked in, but I didn't say anything. I just sat down across from her. Ryan, she began, her voice soft.
I'm sorry.
I said nothing, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. I never meant for this to happen, she continued, tears spilling down her cheeks. I love you. I love our family. Brandon. It was a mistake. I laughed bitterly. A mistake? Jessica, a mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. Over and over again. She flinched but didn't argue. I want to fix this, she said, her voice trembling. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling, anything. Please, Ryan. Don't throw us away. I shook my head, my chest tight with a mix of anger and sorrow. You threw us away, Jess. The second you decided to let him into our life, you made that decision. She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. But then I remembered the texts, the lies, the betrayal. I don't know what to do, I said finally, my voice breaking. I need time. I can't just pretend this didn't happen. Jessica looked up at me, her eyes desperate. Ryan, please, think about the kids. Think about everything we've built. I said, standing up. That's all I've been thinking about. And I have no idea how to move forward from here. I walked upstairs, leaving her alone at the table. As I shut the bedroom door behind me, I felt like I was shutting a chapter of my life, one I wasn't sure I could ever reopen. The next morning, I woke up to a quiet house. Jessica had taken Emma to school and left a note on the counter saying she'd taken Ethan with her to run errands. It was a small reprieve, giving me the space to think. I sat in the living room, staring at the family photos on the wall. They felt like relics from another life, a life I didn't recognize anymore. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number. Unknown. You don't know me, but you should. Call me. It's about Jessica. My heart sank. Another twist? I almost ignored it, thinking it could be a prank or spam. But curiosity, or maybe desperation, got the better of me. I dialed the number, my hands shaking as I brought the phone to my ear. A woman answered on the first ring. Ryan? This is Megan. Megan? I asked, confused. Who are you? I'm Brandon's wife, she said, her voice sharp and full of bitterness. My stomach dropped. Oh God. Yeah, she said, her tone clipped. I found your number in Brandon's phone. I figured you deserved to know the full story since we're both married to liars. I didn't know what to say. I don't even know where to start. Let me help, Megan said, her voice ice cold. Jessica and Brandon have been seeing each other for over a year. They started meeting up last summer. It wasn't just texts or coffee dates. It was full-on hotel rooms, weekend getaways, the works. Her words hit me like a freight train. A year, I whispered, my throat dry. Yes, she said. And it gets worse. Jessica told Brandon she was planning to leave you after the baby was born. I froze. What? She said you were a good father but a terrible husband. Megan continued, her voice shaking now with anger. She was waiting for the right time to break it to you. But apparently that time never came. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Jessica had been planning to leave me? And she'd been telling Brandon I was a bad husband? Megan sighed. Look, I don't know what you're planning to do, but I thought you should have all the facts. Brandon and I are done. I'm filing for divorce. You deserve to know the truth so you can make your own decision. Thank you, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Good luck, Megan said before hanging up. I sat there for what felt like hours, trying to process everything Megan had told me. A year. That was longer than Ethan had been alive. All this time, Jessica had been living a double life, smiling at me, laughing with our kids, while secretly planning to rip it all apart. When Jessica came home later that day, I was waiting for her. She walked in, holding Ethan on her hip, and froze when she saw me. What's wrong? She asked, her eyes narrowing. I talked to Megan, I said, my voice flat. Her face went pale. Megan? Brandon's wife, I clarified. You know, the one who filled in all the gaps you conveniently left out last night. Jessica swallowed hard, setting Ethan in his playpen. Ryan, save it, I said, holding up a hand. I know everything. The hotels, the getaways, your plans to leave me. How long were you planning to keep lying to my face? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For once, she seemed genuinely at a loss. You were going to leave me, I said, my voice breaking. But then what? You had a change of heart? Or was it just easier to stay and keep stringing me along? I didn't know what to do, she said finally, tears streaming down her face. Ryan, I was confused. I never stopped loving you. I was overwhelmed. Stop, I snapped, my voice filled with venom. Don't use love as an excuse. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't cheat. Love doesn't plan an exit strategy while the other person is raising your kids. Jessica collapsed onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. But I felt nothing. No pity, no sympathy. Just a hollow, aching emptiness. You've destroyed us, Jessica, I said quietly. I don't think there's anything left to save. The house felt unbearably quiet that night, even with the kids asleep upstairs. Jessica stayed on the couch long after her tears had stopped, her face buried in her hands. I sat across from her, numb and distant, trying to piece together the shards of my life. Ryan, she finally said, her voice hoarse. I'm begging you, don't give up on us. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll cut off all contact with Brandon. I'll go to therapy. Anything you want. Jessica, I said, leaning forward, my voice low but firm. You don't get it. This isn't something you can just erase with a few promises. You broke everything. Our trust, our bond, our family. How am I supposed to believe anything you say now? I don't know, she admitted, her voice trembling. But I love you, Ryan. I love our kids. Please don't throw this away. I scoffed bitterly. You think I'm throwing this away? You've already done that. You spent a year building a life with someone else, lying to my face, and now you want me to fight for us. I was stupid, she said, her hands trembling as she reached for mine. I was selfish, but I never stopped loving you. That has to count for something. Love, I repeated, pulling my hands away. You don't get to use that word, Jess. Not after what you've done. Love doesn't look like this. She broke down again, but I was too drained to care. I stood up, my body heavy with exhaustion. I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. I need space. Ryan, please, she said, her voice breaking, but I was already walking away. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day talking to a lawyer. I wasn't ready to make any final decisions, but I needed to know my options, for myself and for the kids. The lawyer was kind but direct, laying out the harsh realities of divorce with children involved. It was a sobering conversation. When I got home, Jessica was waiting for me at the kitchen table. She looked like she hadn't slept, her face pale and blotchy from crying. I want to be honest with you, she said, her voice shaky. Completely honest. No more lies. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. Go on. She took a deep breath. Brandon wasn't the first. There were others. My heart stopped. What? I whispered, my voice barely audible. There were 2 others before him, she admitted, her hands trembling. Short, meaningless flings. They didn't mean anything, I swear. But Brandon, it was different. It wasn't just physical. I felt like he understood me in ways. Stop, I said, my voice cold and sharp. I don't want to hear how much better he made you feel.
Jesus, Jéssica.
How long have you been doing this? Her eyes filled with tears. 3 years, she said quietly. It started after Emma was born. I staggered back as if I'd been physically struck. 3 years. My mind reeled, trying to comprehend how much of our marriage had been a lie. How many times had she looked me in the eye, kissed me, told me she loved me, while living this double life? Get out, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Ryan, I said get out. I roared, slamming my hand on the counter. Take your stuff and go. I can't look at you right now. She flinched but didn't argue. For the first time, she seemed to realize how far gone we were. She packed a bag and left without another word. That night, the silence in the house was deafening. For the first time in 10 years, I was completely alone, and the weight of everything hit me like a tidal wave. I broke down, sobbing into my hands, mourning the life I thought I had and the woman I thought I knew. The first night alone was brutal. Every creak of the house reminded me of what was missing. Jessica's presence, the laughter of our kids when we were all together, the life we'd built, or at least the illusion of it. I barely slept, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal, anger, and grief. By morning, I knew I couldn't stay in that dark place. I had 2 kids who needed me. I couldn't afford to fall apart. Jessica texted me early that day. Please let me see the kids. I'll stay somewhere else, but I want to talk to Emma and Ethan. They need their mom. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I wasn't ready to see her, but I couldn't deny that the kids deserved to have both parents in their lives, no matter how broken things were between us. You can pick them up for a few hours this afternoon. I'll pack a bag for them, I replied. When she arrived, I kept things brief. I didn't want a conversation, and from the look on her face, she knew better than to push me. She hugged the kids tightly, her tears obvious as she kissed Ethan's forehead and promised Emma they'd have fun. Watching her leave with them felt like ripping a band-aid off a wound that hadn't begun to heal. For the first time, I realized what co-parenting might look like if we went through with the divorce. Trading off time, missing milestones, splitting holidays. It was a gut-wrenching thought. That afternoon, I got a call from Megan. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her tone softer than before. I hesitated. Honestly, not great. It feels like my entire life is crumbling. I get it, she said. It's the same for me. Brandon's living with a friend right now, and I've already started filing. But it still hurts, you know? Even when you know they're toxic, it doesn't erase the good memories. Hearing her say that hit a nerve. For all my anger, I couldn't deny that Jessica and I had good times. Amazing ones. Even. The betrayal didn't erase those years, but it made them feel tainted. Like I'd been living in a lie without realizing it. Megan sighed. I just wanted to check in. If you ever need to talk, you've got my number. Thanks, I said, meaning it. After hanging up, I realized that I didn't want Jessica's betrayal to define me. I wasn't the one who destroyed our marriage. I'd been loyal, I'd shown up, I'd done my best. And now I had to figure out how to move forward, for myself and for my kids. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes. Daddy, why isn't Mommy staying here tonight? My throat tightened. Mommy and I are figuring out some grown-up stuff. Sweetheart, I said carefully. But no matter what, we both love you and Ethan very much. That'll never change. She nodded, her little face serious. Okay. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, I said, kissing her forehead. As I closed her door, I made a silent promise to myself. I wouldn't let Jessica's choices define my life or my kids' lives. I'd find a way to rebuild, even if it meant starting over from scratch. The next few days were a whirlwind of trying to maintain some sense of normalcy for Emma and Ethan while figuring out what my next steps would be. Jessica texted a few times, mostly about the kids, but I kept my replies short and strictly logistical. Every message from her felt like a slap in the face, a reminder of the life she'd shattered. Then, just when I thought I'd started to grasp the scope of her betrayal, another bomb dropped. I was going through our shared bank account, preparing to set up my own separate finances, when I noticed several transactions that didn't make sense. Charges from a luxury hotel downtown, expensive restaurants we'd never gone to, and a high-end jewelry store. At first, I thought they might have been errors or identity theft. But as I looked closer, the dates lined up perfectly with Jessica's girls' nights and self-care weekends. My blood boiled as the realization set in. She'd been using our money to fund her affair. I immediately called the jewelry store. Hi, I said, doing my best to sound calm. I'm checking on a purchase made recently. My wife bought something, and I just wanted to confirm the details. The salesperson was polite and all too happy to help. Yes, I see the purchase here. A platinum bracelet with an inscription. My stomach churned. Inscription. Yes, they said. It says, "Forever yours, B." B, I muttered, the room spinning around me. Brandon, of course. Sir? The salesperson asked, concerned. Thanks for your help, I said tightly, hanging up before I could explode. That night, I called Jessica. She picked up on the first ring. Ryan, she asked cautiously. I know about the bracelet, I said, skipping the pleasantries. And the hotels. And the dinners. You were using our money to fund your affair? Weren't you? There was a long pause and then she sighed. Ryan, don't even try to deny it, I snapped. You took the money I earned to buy gifts for the man you were cheating on me with. Do you have any idea how disgusting that is? I wasn't thinking, she said weakly. No, you were thinking, I shot back. You were thinking about yourself. About him. About how to keep your little fantasy going while I was at home taking care of our kids. I'll pay it back, she said, her voice trembling. Every cent. I promise. It's not about the money, Jessica, I said, my voice breaking. It's about the fact that I trusted you with everything, and you betrayed me in every possible way. I know, she whispered. I know I've messed up, Ryan, but please don't take the kids away from me. They're my whole world. Funny, I said bitterly. They didn't seem to matter much when you were sneaking off to hotels and restaurants with Brandon. She started crying, but I didn't care. I was too angry, too disgusted. The next day, I contacted my lawyer again. File for divorce, I told her, and make it clear that I want full custody of the kids. My lawyer nodded, her expression serious. With the evidence you have, you'll have a strong case. But be prepared, it could get messy. I'll do whatever it takes, I said. I'm not letting her drag our kids into the chaos she created. That night, for the first time in weeks, I felt a small sense of clarity. I couldn't change what Jessica had done, but I could take control of what came next. Filing for divorce felt like ripping off a Band-Aid that had been holding together a gaping wound. It was painful, but it was necessary. Jessica was served the papers 2 days later. Her reaction was immediate and explosive. How could you do this? She screamed over the phone. You didn't even give me a chance to prove I could fix things. I kept my tone calm, though my blood was boiling. Jessica, you had plenty of chances. You didn't just cross a line, you obliterated it. This isn't fixable. She started crying, but her tears didn't move me this time. You're trying to take my kids away from me, Ryan. You can't do that. They're not just your kids, Jessica, I said sharply. They're ours, and I'm not trying to take them away. I'm trying to protect them from the mess you've created. Over the next few weeks, the divorce process quickly turned into a battle. Jessica hired an aggressive lawyer who tried to paint me as an absent workaholic who had emotionally neglected her. She even tried to claim that I'd been controlling by not letting her have financial freedom. A ridiculous excuse to justify the money she'd spent on Brandon. I came prepared. I had the texts, the receipts, the photos, all the evidence I needed to prove her infidelity and how she'd misused our shared finances. My lawyer was relentless, dismantling every argument Jessica's side threw at us. But the hardest part wasn't the legal fight, it was dealing with the emotional fallout. Jessica started using Emma as a pawn, asking her questions like, "Wouldn't you rather live with Mommy?" Or telling her, "Daddy wants to take you away from me." When Emma came to me crying, asking why I was being mean to Mommy, I felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. I did my best to reassure her, telling her that I loved her and Ethan more than anything and that none of this was her fault. Still, it was exhausting. I spent sleepless nights wondering if I was doing the right thing. Was fighting for full custody really what was best for the kids? Or was I letting my anger cloud my judgment? Then one day I got a call from Megan. "I thought you'd want to know," she said. "Brandon left town. He got a job offer in another state and he's taking it." "Good riddance," I said bitterly. "It's probably for the best," Megan agreed. "But I also thought you should know. Jessica's been trying to contact him. A lot. He's been ignoring her, but it's clear she hasn't given up on him." That news hit me harder than I expected. Even as we were in the middle of a divorce, Jessica was still chasing Brandon. It solidified my resolve. When I told my lawyer, she nodded. "That's more evidence to support your case. It shows where her priorities are." The custody hearing was brutal. Jessica cried on the stand, painting herself as a devoted mother who'd made a few mistakes. I countered with the cold, hard truth, laying out the timeline of her affairs and her neglect of our family. In the end, the judge granted me primary custody, with Jessica getting supervised visitation until she could prove she was stable. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was enough to protect the kids for now. When the ruling came down, Jessica stormed out of the courtroom, refusing to even look at me. I watched her go, feeling a strange mix of relief and sorrow. This wasn't how I wanted things to end, but it was the only way forward. The day the divorce was finalized felt surreal. It wasn't a moment of celebration. It was more like the closing of a long, painful chapter. I walked out of the courthouse with the official paperwork in hand, feeling both heavy and strangely free. Jessica didn't say anything to me as we left the building. She just climbed into her car and drove away, her face set in a mix of anger and sadness. I didn't feel anger toward her anymore, though. At that moment, all I felt was exhaustion. Life slowly began to stabilize in the weeks that followed. Having primary custody of Emma and Ethan gave me a renewed sense of purpose. I threw myself into being the best dad I could be, packing lunches, helping with homework, and doing my best to keep things as normal as possible for them. Jessica's supervised visits were tense at first. She was polite but distant, as if she didn't know how to act around me anymore. Over time, though, she seemed to focus more on the kids, and I was grateful for that. Whatever my feelings about her, I wanted her to have a relationship with them. Megan checked in with me occasionally, and our conversations became a surprising source of comfort. She understood the chaos I'd been through better than anyone else. There was nothing romantic between us, just two people helping each other navigate the wreckage left by our spouses. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I sat in the living room and allowed myself to reflect on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak. It had all felt so overwhelming at the time, like I'd never recover. But now I realized I was healing. Slowly but surely, I was piecing my life back together. The pain was still there, but it didn't consume me anymore. I'd learned how to live with it, how to let it shape me without defining me. I thought about the man I'd been when I first married Jessica. Young, idealistic, and maybe a little naive. That version of me was gone, replaced by someone older, wiser, and perhaps a bit scarred. But I was okay with that. If there's one thing I've taken away from this experience, it's this. Love isn't just about passion or excitement. It's about trust, respect, and choosing to show up for each other every single day. When that trust is broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, my advice is simple. Trust your instincts, value yourself, and don't settle for less than you deserve. It's okay to walk away from something that no longer serves you, no matter how much it hurts. As for me, I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll meet someone new someday, someone who values loyalty as much as I do. Or maybe I'll just focus on raising my kids and finding happiness on my own. Either way, I know one thing for sure. I'll be okay. Because even in the darkest moments, there's always a way forward. You just have to keep moving. Thank you for staying with me. This crazy journey is finally over and I'm ready for what's next. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more interesting stories. And leave a comment with what you would do in this situation. See you in the next videos.